Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Aaron Nix, and this is the Wrestle YouTube channel, and I'm back to discuss Impact on Access TV, and I open up with an absolute banger. Cousin Jake, who is now, of course, Jake Something. What's my name? Jake Something, although Cody Deaner won't have an opportunity to repeat that name because he's out cold because he went through a table. They open up with this violent mess of a table match, and I loved it. It was fantastic. It felt quite realistic. But the sheer power of Jake Something actually was really impressive. There was a moment where he kind of cannonballed off Cody Deaner, of course. He cannonballed off the hardest part of the ring apron, and it just caught him in midair, like he was a child. Like, come here, you. And you know, they really laid their shit in. Actually, this was one of the more physical, hard-hitting impacts I've seen for a very long time, and this is a perfect way to open up the show. It was great stuff, and obviously, somebody has big plans for Jake Something, because not only did he win this tables match by stuffing Cody Deaner through that table with a black hole slam, bag of ham, but he also got into the mix with Moose. Moose comes down to the ring, smashes him for a table in the corner, and sits down like the old college professor, cool style, you know. Moose is sitting down and he says, yeah, this show ain't going on until I get a title match. Obviously, Scott D'Amore comes down and says, right, you want to be a world champion? Here's the big news from this Impact. Scott D'Amore has reinstated the TNA World Heavyweight Championship as a legitimate belt. It's now official again, which means we have two world titles in the company. Normally, I would be like, oh, God, why are you doing that for? Because it's not like they have two shows like WWE where you could kind of understand why you'd need more than one world title. But at the same time, it makes sense. It's particularly from a storytelling perspective, because Moose believes that he's an uncrowned champion. He believes that he has never got his rightful title shot. It seems like an age since he truly got a proper heavyweight title shot. The last one that I remember, at least that just comes quickly sparking to memory, was his match with Austin Aries. That seems like an age ago, and he may have had something since, but that's the one that I remember most. So the idea behind the TNA World title is that Moose believes this to be the uncrowned belt, and he believes that by holding this belt, that somehow makes him a better world champion. It's a case of, your world title's all very well and good, Rich Swann, but I've got this belt, and I've actually taken this belt, which nobody even remembers, and completely reinstated it myself. And I think that's the whole idea behind it, is that it's supposed to represent a trophy-like replacement of what he believes is a true world heavyweight title befitting of him. So I think it works really well. And his first defense will be against Jake Something. Big night for Jake Something. Sticks his cousin right for a table, and he'll get a TNA world title shot later on in the night. Something I really love, of course, is the X Division. For me, the X Division is what has held up TNA, and frankly, has held this company up for a long time, along with, obviously, the Broken Hardys and the cinematic style of wrestling, which they made so popular before WWE got on the bandwagon. The X Division title is very important to the prestige and to the continued entertainment of TNA/Impact Wrestling. And of course, a six-man tag team match involving six of the best wrestlers in the world today, well, that can only help the brand. Trey Miguel, Josh Alexander, and of course, Willie Mack facing Chris Bay, Black Taurus, and ASOS. It was fantastic. It was everything you expected it to be. I don't need to tell you how good a match like this is. You know it's going to be excellent. Obviously, Josh Alexander, who was a guest on this podcast on the weekend, and there's obviously infinite time for you to check that out, and I highly recommend you do so if you're a fan of Impact, and particularly a fan of the North. It was a fantastic interview, and once again, thank you, Josh, for joining me. So make sure you check that out when you get an opportunity. But, you know, I could give you all the hyperbole in the world, but this match was excellent. Something that really stood out to me is something that I've been on a bandwagon from the very get-go, and that is that Black Taurus could genuinely be a huge, huge star. And I've seen some people saying, oh, the only thing that will let him down is the fact he doesn't talk. No, if anything, that's perfect. Because he's got Crazy Steve and Rosemary, two very accomplished talkers, particularly Rosemary, who are in his corner. Obviously, he's part of Decay. The Death Dealers are back, as they announced after this match. And of course, it's Team Heel that wins. Black Taurus, by the way, his dynamics with Willie Mack and Josh Alexander, those are immediately two pay-per-view worthy main events right there. just from watching this match for a couple of minutes. The back and forth that those guys had was incredible, particularly the stuff with Willie Mack, actually. Now, obviously, Josh Alexander is fucking incredible, and his power and the way he's able to just muscle up a guy like Black Taurus, that's incredible. He's a specimen. But something that really jumped out at me, actually, was the highlight that was Willie Mack versus Black Taurus, because once they get in the ring, you're thinking, it's meaty Hoss time. And don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, you can buy a Make America Hoss Again t-shirt at prowrestlingtees.com/wrestleplug, and I highly recommend you do so. But that's the cheeky wrestle plug out of the way, because when these two guys got in the ring, it was just amazingly high flying, actually. You would have been forgiven for thinking that these were two meaty heavyweights. No, they just went straight for the aerial stuff. And I saw some people complaining about that. To be honest, social media, everyone complains about everything. That's just the way it is. Even we do that. Hell, I've made an entire YouTube channel out of complaining. But at the same time, I actually really enjoyed this, because what it did is it completely reiterated the point, which is the X Division is all about no limits, not weight limits. And I thought it was excellent. Team heel wins, of course. Chris Bay, Ace Austin, and Black Taurus will move on next week to a triple threat match. The winner of that will no doubt be the #1 contender for TJP's X Division title. And I'm assuming that'll be a match at Sacrifice. Now, not everything on the show was excellent to me. It wasn't bad, but the Good Brothers versus Triple XL just felt like it was there for the sake of it. The Good Brothers went over pretty handily, which is a bit of a shame, because they built Triple XL up as these kind of, heavyweight, hard-hitting contenders, and they were kind of dispatched quite easily. And also, one thing that really stands out about Luke Gallows in particular is just how big he looked. AC Romero and Larry D are big units of men, and Luke Gallows got in there and made them look average size. That's how big he is. He is a legitimate behemoth. But it just felt like the match was pretty much a setup so that they could go backstage, have it out with Finn Juice. There was a little bit of back and forth. But next week, Finn Juice and the Good Brothers will be tagging up in an 8-man tag team contest. So that'll be interesting to see. They're obviously building a dynamic between these two teams, combustible elements, and I'm very excited to see where this goes, because if they're going to give us Good Brothers versus Finn Juice at Sacrifice, all of a sudden Sacrifice is looking like one of the better pay-per-view cards of the year, particularly as we already know what the main event will be. Something that I really didn't like was the women's match. Not because I don't like women's wrestling, and not because I thought the match in particular was bad. I just think it really exposed how little they thought about the Knockouts tag team division in the long term, because it was fantastic with this little tournament getting to the final, Havoc and Nevaeh, who are still teasing a split up, and Tennille Dashwood getting in the way and trying to court either of them as a partner, particularly Havoc. But, Jordan Grace and Jazz, right? They're facing Kimberly, who is great, and Susan, who I have zero care about. I know people want to mark out about the fact, oh, how incredible is it that she's a third character? Yeah, well, this character for me sucks. I think it's boring. I don't think it really adds anything to her kind of nuances as a character. I want to see where it's going now. It feels like they've had it for a few weeks now. So hopefully them losing to Jordan Grace and Jazz is going to open the door for maybe Su Yung to return, or for Susan to finally snap and change, because I just don't really like this. I think it's really tedious, and it actually makes credibility of the match go down quite a bit, because why shouldn't Jazz, a certifiable Hall of Famer, or Jordan Grace, who is legitimately a monstrous powerhouse, be able to just slap this woman in a suit and Adidas Classics all around the ring? It doesn't make any sense to me, and to be honest, it's really knocked me out of it. And the fact that this was the only real representation of the women as well was really disappointing to me, because I feel like you've got an incredibly strong roster, but dare I say that the women's division seems to be going backwards. When was the last time Deonna Purrazzo defended the Knockouts Championship? Her and ODB got ejected. ODB's knocked out afterwards. Who cares? Who fucking cares? Can we make the Knockouts title important again? And if Deonna Purrazzo, for whatever reason, maybe can't defend it because she's injured or something, then find somebody who can. Sorry, it's nothing against Deonna Purrazzo. I think she's incredible. She's beautiful. She's an amazing wrestler. One of the best in the world, actually. But that belt needs representation. Because, even a belt like the TNA World Championship, which up until this week wasn't even recognised as an official belt, that's getting premium booking, and the women's champion is doing quite literally nothing. I need more from you, because all of a sudden, it's gone from being arguably the second best women's division in North America to being a complete and utter throwaway event. And now you're starting to get in danger of falling into the same kind of bracket as AEW's women's division. And although they're building up and starting to finally come good with this Eliminator tournament to a certain extent, they're still lagging way behind everybody else. And it's worrying to know that the Knockouts division, which has been so vaunted and so historic for so many years, is actually starting to kind of fade away a little bit. And that's got nothing to do with the women, by the way. That's got everything to do with the distinct lack of creative booking that is put in place for the women on Impact Wrestling. Speaking of people that I like, but booking that I could give two shits about, here comes Pirate Prick, Brian Myers, but he's not going to wrestle Eddie Edwards, which, by the way, I didn't want to see anyway, and I certainly didn't want to see his heavy Hernandez, who's just clogging up the system. You know, he comes out, he wrestles Eddie Edwards as a replacement because some camp lawyer's on the screen, who I swear I've seen before and I don't really care about, and he loses in about 2 minutes to Eddie Edwards. Is it just me, or was Eddie Edwards a lot better when he was a part of the Wolves? I do enjoy Eddie Edwards to a certain extent, but I've kind of got tired of this cosplay Tommy Dreamer stuff. I want to see more from him, as opposed to just guy who dresses suspiciously like John Cena and swings a kendo stick around. He's such a great wrestler, and he's truly trained by some of the best, and yet he's out here in jorts and a cut-off top and trainers, and it just doesn't feel like it's the best Eddie Edwards you could be getting at this point. It was fantastic for a while. I get why he turned with the Sami Callihan stuff, but for me, I just don't care. I certainly don't care about Brian Myers. He's a WWE washout. It's nothing against Brian Myers, but he hasn't done anything since he's come in. All he's done is just come on the screen and moan about how he's a professional wrestler and he doesn't have to do this and he doesn't have to. It's boring. It's been done to death and people have done it better. Matt Cardona is set up as the special guest referee because next week we will finally get, once again, Brian Myers versus Eddie Edwards. I don't care. I don't want to see it. And I'll be honest with you, that feels and smells like a whopper heel turn. I feel like Matt Cardona is going to turn on Eddie Edwards next week, and we are going to get the Edgeheads reunion live on Impact on Access TV. Whoopee. Sorry, just doesn't tickle my fancy, I'm afraid. I love Impact Wrestling, and I love all of the wrestlers involved in Impact Wrestling. But if something doesn't tickle my fancy, I'm going to tell you, because I'm not here to blow smoke up people's asses. I'm here to tell you what I genuinely think of the product. And although so many things about this show were excellent, stuff like this, I got to be honest, I can do without it. But the main event is something I certainly can do with. Jake Something taking on Moose. And immediately this main event was fantastic because during Moose's entrance, when he's in the spotlight, which by the way I feel is arguably the best entrance in wrestling, it's so simple and yet so effective. Jake Something pushes him out of his own spotlight and then just stands there and takes the spotlight for himself. Brilliant metaphor. Brilliant stuff. Look how simple and effective that was. You didn't have to go through some 10-minute promo like a Seth Rollins sitting out there warbling on like an old man. You just literally have Jake Something go, get out of the fucking way. I am in the spotlight. It's my time now. And then they have, frankly, an excellent knockout, drag-out, meaty Hoss fight. Did I mention that we sell meaty Hoss tees at prowrestlingtees.com/WrestlePlug? Did I mention that you can get them for just $20, ladies and gentlemen? If I didn't, you really should check those out. This was fantastic. I love this. They just kicked the living shit out of each other. And it was... People moaning earlier in the night about how they didn't get Black Taurus versus Willie Mack in a knockout smash mouth affair. Well, here you go. Two whopping great meaty slapping hosses. I love it. Absolutely. My hossometer was flying all over the place during this one. I loved it. The clotheslines, the forearms, the volleys back and forth. It was great stuff. And ultimately, of course, it is Moose that comes out on top. But Moose isn't finished. It was a great match, but Moose isn't done. He wants to inflict more pain, make an example out of this. Moose looks like he's going to really lay his shit in and make an example of Jake Something. And out comes the world champion, who apparently isn't medically cleared to compete and wasn't there. Well, apparently he was. Here comes Rich Swann. Brawl ensues. Scott DeBoer comes out, makes a carousel reference. Fair enough, mate. Here's the main event, but don't worry about it. And he sets up the big one. This upcoming Sacrifice. I believe it's March the 13th on Impact Plus, their next big pay-per-view event, so to speak. It will be Moose versus Rich Swann for the Impact World Championship. We don't have to wait any longer. We finally know that these two are going to get it on. And I actually think it's going to be top quality. And I actually think Moose might be capturing the belt at this event. And this is going to be a really important match because ultimately the winner of this is probably going to go into, I believe it's Rebellion, which is obviously at the back end of April. And that feels like that's building up to be the big crossover between AEW and Impact Wrestling. It will be very interesting to see what they do in terms of booking for this match, and I'm excited about the match nonetheless. And it's again another opportunity for Moose to show why I think he is genuinely one of the biggest and most rising stars in professional wrestling. But that's it from me, Aaron X. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of Impact if you did watch it. But nonetheless, thank you very much for watching. I've been Aaron X, and I'll catch you very soon for more content from the Wrestle Plug.